This is Fred Richani of TSC News right here on YouTube. Here to recap the Daniel Cormier versus Jon Jones UFC 214 pay-per-view. Man, this event right here represented the very best and worst of mixed martial arts. The best, the pure talent we saw in the main event. Jon Jones, Daniel Cormier. Cormier held his own in round 1, held his own in round 2. You could even make the argument that he won not one, but both first rounds. It was insane. He was looking confident. He was showboating a bit. He was taunting Jones. He was landing shots. He was closing the distance. And then in round number 3, Jones just turned it up. Used that reach advantage to, well, his advantage. Man, and on July 30th, I guess July 29th in Vegas, 2017, Jon Jones reclaimed his light heavyweight crown, hit a vicious head kick, tagged Cormier with elbows on the ground, punches on the ground. Big John McCarthy is a great referee, and I understand he was trying to give Cormier the benefit of the doubt, trying to give him every chance to recover. But man, Cormier is getting close to 40, and he was just taking those shots. Stopped the fight. And Cormier's just on the ground, grimacing in pain, crying, walked out of the octagon at one point. People are booing. I wouldn't boo a guy that was on the ground for that long and then walked out. When they interviewed him afterwards, he was crying. Didn't even remember what happened. He said, well, they told me I got kicked in the head and, you know, I lost twice, so that's not much of a rivalry. And it was just so depressing. The great aspects of MMA, we got to see the best of the best fight and give it their all and leave it inside the octagon. We got to see the Michael Jordan of MMA in terms of talent, in terms of greatness, regain his crown. And then the pitfalls, the sad aspect of MMA, the lows of this sport, my God, much like boxing, they are low. And Daniel Cormier, while he did suffer a brutal knockout loss, more importantly, he suffered a brutal knockout loss that probably gave him a horrible, horrible concussion because, I mean, the guy can't, I mean, all concussions are bad, but this looked really bad. And, you know, you hope that's not the end for the guy, but he is getting close to 40. Could he fight his way back into contention? Yes. Could he go up to heavyweight? Yes, but he had never been stopped before prior to this fight, and you wonder, you know, he's taking a lot of shots, taking a lot of damage. That first Anthony Rumble Johnson fight, took a big shot, almost got finished. In the Gustafsson fight, took a lot of big shots. He did withstand Jon Jones for 5 rounds in the first fight, but he got knocked out here in round number 3, and I personally think the guy's an all-time great. He had a great run at heavyweight. He ended up becoming champion at light heavyweight. People could say, oh, well, he never beat the official champ. That's true, and that's going to be part of the narrative of his career. But at the end of the day, is he one of the greatest of all time? Is he maybe the second greatest light heavyweight of all time? You can make the strong argument there that he is. And yeah, just very, very sad to see. If he retired tomorrow, honestly, I wouldn't blame him. It's a sad end, but it is what it is. That's the sport, man. Not everybody's lucky to you know, go out on their own terms. That's for sure. As for Jon Jones, he looked great. He withstood the early onslaught from Cormier. He took some shots. He showed that at age 30, he's still got a chin. He still has great takedown defense. He still has an amazing reach advantage that he uses, well, to his advantage, unlike Stefan Struve and some other guys that are pretty tall in MMA. And yeah, he is still vicious as hell. He got the win, got on his knees. He broke down crying. He thanked the fans. He thanked his haters. He said he effed up a lot, but he's thankful for the people that stood by him. And then afterwards, he cut a promo on Daniel Cormier. But rather than insult Daniel Cormier, he put him over. He called him a great champion. He said he's a champion and nobody can ever take that away from him. And even more so, he's a great human being. I hope to be a human being like Daniel Cormier. And then it cut to Cormier, who's back in the cage, just breaking down, crying with his team. And it was so heartbreaking, so heartbreaking. Jones goes to hug Cormier. Cormier is just so out of it. He's just so out of it. And oh man, and Jones also thanked Cormier for pushing him, for being his greatest rival. And Jones should thank him, because not only did Cormier push him physically and mentally, but he pushed him financially, because Jon Jones probably made more money in these two Cormier fights than he did in his entire career. I mean, not combined, but out of all the opponents, Daniel Cormier by far is his biggest money-making opponent. And speaking of money, after all that, Jon Jones got on the mic again and said, "Hey, Brock Lesnar, if you want to know what it's like to get your ass kicked by a guy that's 40 pounds lighter than you, fight me." And he dropped the mic and walked out of the octagon. Holy doodle squat, we could very well get the rumored fight of Jon Jones versus Brock Lesnar. Maybe not at MSG, because a lot of things depend on the suspension that Brock Lesnar is currently serving. A lot of it depends on if Brock can get relicensed. A lot of it depends on WWE green lighting this dream match. Who knows if they will? Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I guess we'll see when SummerSlam happens, because Brock Lesnar's defending his title against 3 other men. If Brock happens to lose, hey, that could definitely open the door for Brock to come back to the UFC. And if he doesn't come back this year, I could definitely see him coming back next year, perhaps Super Bowl weekend or January, whatever, but early 2018. But man, oh man, Jon Jones, great performance, great babyface promo. The guy's definitely a good guy again in the eyes of a lot of fans. And great hype man, because he set up his next fight, which could by far be his biggest money-making fight, other than, of course, this fight and the previous Cormier fight. So, wow. Did this pay-per-view live up to the hype? You damn right. But that wasn't all. We had a few other fights on this card that were freaking awesome. But we had one fight that was not so awesome. That is for sure. We had Tyron Woodley, Demian Maia. What can I say about Tyron Woodley? The guy looks like Hercules. The guy hits really hard. The guy has great takedown defense, great wrestling. He's improved in his cardio over the last couple of years. But man, his last 2 title defenses have been horrendous to watch. The Wonder Boy fight goes without saying. The first one was excellent. The second one was abysmal. It was maybe the worst title fight of all time. So then, we get Maia versus Woodley, which I think is a hard-ass style matchup for Mr. Maia, and it proved to be, because he could not take down Woodley. I think he was 0 for 17 in takedown attempts, or maybe 0 for 18. It was ridiculous. He was trying to set up the takedown, trying to pump that left here and there, but he was just, trying to fight like the UFC of old, one style. And you know what? That one style works when you're as good as Demian Maia. But Dominic Cruz pointed this out. It does not work if you have nothing else to set it up with when you're fighting the top 3 fighters in a division. And Maia's one of the top 3 fighters. I'd say Wonder Boy's the other one. And then you got the champ, Tyron Woodley. So Tyron Woodley tagged Maia. Hell, from the opening bell, Maia's eye was swollen and bleeding. I think it was just from like a shimmy or a quick punch from Woodley. I mean, that shows his strength. It was awesome. But here's the problem. Per Joe Rogan, Woodley set the record, along with Maia, for the least amount of strikes thrown in a welterweight fight. Which, last time I checked, I think, didn't they set that record for the last Thompson and Woodley fight? That's 2 straight all-time horrible title defenses for Woodley. Not just boring fights, all-time horrible title defenses. Ugh. This is like Anderson Silva territory when he was fighting Maia and Ladies and all these guys. Maybe even worse. At least Anderson had a history of destroying guys, and Woodley's had some big wins in the past, but man, this dude needs a finish or something. He did call out GSP afterwards. Well, he did actually presume that he's going to fight GSP at MSG. That's probably going to happen. I'm sure fans will buy that fight solely for GSP. But from a stylistic standpoint, GSP with a 4-year layoff, who frankly was not the most exciting fighter towards the end, just, a great personality, but not the most exciting fighter towards the end, versus Tyron Woodley, who's had 2 straight horrendous title defenses. And look, I'll cut him some slack on Maia. Maia is dangerous. He's an all-time great jiu-jitsu fighter. The Thompson fight, I'm not going to cut him slack for that one. He definitely could have beaten Thompson. He definitely could have poured it on him a little more. in their second fight. But Maia, at least I can understand. Still, it is what it is, and that's 2 straight horrible title defenses. And yes, for those wondering, Woodley did retain his championship, but it was so brutal. Oh, just brutal. Speaking of brutal, oh my God, we had Cris Cyborg take on Tonya Evinger. Tonya Evinger, I believe, is the 135-pound champion in Invicta. Went up in weight to fight Cyborg for the fake belt that UFC created, just to crown just to give the Cyborg, just to crown her champion. I guess they think she's a draw because she popped 1 rating. I respect the hell out of Cyborg and her accomplishments, but between her recent drug suspension, between all the BS about her not wanting to cut weight and not being able to cut weight, and it's too dangerous to cut weight and all this BS, I felt like, you know what? The girl's probably more trouble than she's worth. But she did cut weight successfully here. She did make it to the fight, and she did destroy Tonya Evinger. Now, kudos to Evinger. Evinger did tie her up a bit. Evinger did land some good shots. And Evinger did last until round number 3, until she was TKO'd. And Cris Cyborg is your new women's featherweight champion. All I got to say is Germaine Geronimo, whatever the hell her name is, who beat Holly Holm in what was also a horrible Tyron Woodley-like title fight back in February. She's probably crying somewhere because Tonya Evinger, who had no business being in the cage with Cris Cyborg, held her own for 3 rounds. Okay, her stock went up. I think she should definitely get a shot in the UFC. They should take her away from Invicta, give her another opportunity. She took this fight, stepped up to the plate, and did her very best, and actually got an entertaining fight out of Cyborg that didn't just involve her getting destroyed. I mean, I'd say 80-90% of it was her getting destroyed, but you know what I'm saying. She did hold her own. She showed tremendous heart, tremendous toughness, and Durandamy didn't even want to fight Cyborg. Are you kidding me? You're the UFC champion, and you'd rather vacate your title? Some people may say, well, Miesha Tate didn't want to fight Cyborg. Holly Holm didn't want to fight Cyborg. Ronda Rousey didn't want to fight Cyborg. Yes, I get that. But guess what? They're 135-pounders. It made no sense for them to fight Cyborg, okay? None of them said, I'm going to vacate my title just so I don't fight Cyborg. That's ridiculous. You might as well cut her. I don't know if they... Is she cut? Is she fired? I don't know what the hell Durandamy's freaking status is. And frankly, I don't care. But Cris Cyborg, your new women's featherweight champion. And now here's the real challenge. Finding anyone else who's actually in her weight class that is willing to fight her. Because that is easier said than done. Whew. Okay, I was corrected here. It was 0 for 23. Jesus, for Demian Maia. 0 for 23 in takedowns. Wow. Dan Bone says on the live stream, and Tyron Woodley wonders why no one cares to see him fight and wonders why they announced Maia so close to the fight and gave them no promotion. I think they still, no matter what, should have given the guy promotion, but yeah, I get what you're saying there. By the way, if you guys are enjoying this live stream, please feel free to click the like button and click the subscribe button. We got a ton of MMA content I think you guys will enjoy. Speaking of MMA content, this next fight was worth the pay-per-view price alone. I just wish it was 5 rounds. Robbie Lawler versus Donald Cowboy Cerrone. This fight went to unanimous decision, 29-28 for Robbie Lawler. Great fight. Robbie Lawler came out strong. I thought that Cerrone was going to get blasted like he did in the RDA fight, where RDA just kind of came out guns a-blazing and Cerrone was overwhelmed. Cerrone at times has the tendency to start off slow, but he held his own, responded in round number 2. This was a very close fight. This was a very violent fight. A few of the notable things, Cerrone withstood everything that Robbie Lawler threw at him, survived some close calls. Lawler, for everybody that said he no longer has a chin, for his long-term health, I feel bad for him doing this, but this is Robbie Lawler here. There were times where I felt like Robbie Lawler, as my friend Skydoll said on Twitter, tried to get his head taken off. He just ate shot after shot after shot. He ate several leg kicks. Somehow, his head stayed between his shoulders. Somehow, he stayed conscious, and he was able to will himself to a unanimous decision. This was a great fight between 2 great fighters. Really, Cerrone will go down as maybe the greatest fighter. I don't know, maybe the greatest fighter. one of the greatest fighters of all time to never win a title. I mean, really. I mean, you could put him up there with, like, Joseph Benavidez. I guess in the UFC, you could put Uriah Faber up there, although Uriah Faber did win the WEC title and was a pioneer. He's just one of those guys that, has never gotten to that championship level in terms of actually winning the title. But he is, I think, an all-time great non-title fighter, for real. He is. And that decision could have gone either way. Crowd hated the decision. I didn't have a problem with it. It was a close fight. It was a violent fight. All these guys, both these guys left it all out there in the octagon. But this was definitely a career shortener. And speaking of career shortener, I'm just watching an animated GIF of this knockout. Volkan Ozdemir. That's such a great name. Knocked out Jimmy Manuwa. Knocked him out cold, 42 seconds in round number 1. Afterwards, he said he's got no time. His nickname's No Time. He's got no time. And he's calling out the winner of Cormier versus Jones. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be Gustafsson versus Jones 2, which is another highly anticipated rematch in the career of Jon Jones. Should be a great fight. If the Gustafsson who waxed Glover Teixeira fights this Jon Jones, my God, we could see a damn close fight and a repeat of their classic initial encounter. But Ozdemir, he left an impression. Give him a top 10 guy for sure. Or another top 10 guy. I don't know who you even give him next, but he's a beast. He's a beast. That's for sure. Speaking of beast, Ricardo Lamas destroyed Jason Knight via TKO, punches in round number 1. Aljamain Sterling at catchweight, 140 pounds, defeated Renan Barão via unanimous decision. Where the hell does Renan Barão go from here? A huge fall from grace. I don't know if it was USADA. I don't know if it was because he got tagged and all of a sudden he realized he didn't have a chin. I don't know what it is. Maybe he was just, a victim of too much hype. Maybe, for lack of better verbiage here, he fought a bunch of dudes who weren't very good or pretty good, but not the greats. And once he fought the greats, he got exposed. Who the hell knows? But ever since that TJ Dillashaw fight that was a quote-unquote upset, he has not been the same guy at all. So I have no idea where the hell Renan Barão goes from here. But clearly, he's still having issues with weight cutting and taking shots. That's for sure. Although he did survive this fight. Brian Ortega defeated Renato Moicano via guillotine choke in round number 3. This was a good fight. Calvin Kattar defeated Andre Fili via unanimous decision. This was a really good fight. I missed the Fight Pass prelims, but Alexandra Albu defeated Kaylin Curran via unanimous decision. I was told this was a really good fight. Jared Brooks, whoever the hell that is, defeated Eric Shelton via split decision. And Drew Dober, who I like a lot, I think he should have been on the televised card, but that's just me, defeated Josh Berkman via knockout 3 minutes, 4 seconds into round number 1. So overall, I thought this was one hell of a card from top to bottom. Outside of the hemorrhoid that was the Woodley Maia fight, this was a great pay-per-view card. Cormier Jones 2, definitely better than the first. And like I said, Jones, Gustafsson on the horizon. We'll see, although it could see Dana White saying, you know what, we need to make some money here. And the money right now is in Jones and Lesnar, and maybe they'd hold off Jones to fight Lesnar. You could do Gustafsson-Jones, and honestly, even if Jones somehow, someway loses to Gustafsson, I think he could still go up to heavyweight and fight Brock. But if Jones loses to Gustafsson, all of a sudden the money's in Gustafsson-Jones 3, not Jones versus Lesnar. Now in that case, you know what? I'm trying to think here. Here's what you could do. If you're the UFC and you're really impatient and you really, really want to do Jones-Gustafsson 2, and Brock really, really wants to fight and not wait for Jones, you could do Cormier going back up to heavyweight, taking on Brock Lesnar, and you could do Jon Jones versus Gustafsson. That being said, Jones set up that fight perfectly with that promo, so it remains to be seen what happens. I'll say this, if you're the UFC, this is a good problem to have. You got not one, but 2 marquee opponents potentially on the horizon for Jon Jones. All right, let's go to the comments here before we get on out. Anti-Tribute says, Jason Jordan isn't Kurt Angle's real son. That has nothing to do with UFC, but that is true. I respect the fact that Jon Jones gave Daniel Cormier some respect on his name at the end. I respect that too. That was very, very classy by Jon Jones. Fred, if GSP for whatever reason does not fight this year, who does Woodley fight next? Whew, that is a very, very good question. Well, let's look at the top 10 welterweights in the UFC right now. And let's see who he would fight. You know, you could do a Robbie Lawler rematch. And if Robbie Lawler is able to withstand the early onslaught from Woodley, you know, that might be a great fight. Man, I don't know. Not too many marquee opponents, that's for sure. So they better hope that GSP can fight. But after this, I mean, what other marquee fights does UFC have? None really, if you really think about it. None really. They have Conor versus Floyd, and I know they're getting a cut out of that. I still can't believe Conor McGregor talked his way into that fight. But I've said this before, I'll say it again. I think if Conor wins or loses, he's never going to fight in the UFC again. Because he's going to make 50 to 100 million, somewhere around that range. He's going to look at all that money, and he's going to say, why the hell would I fight for $10 to $15 million in the UFC and take brain damage when I have a beautiful wife and child? When I could just count my money the rest of my life. Or maybe he could even get another boxing match for around that range. I doubt it, but hypothetically speaking, maybe he could. Maybe he could get more money boxing even if he loses to Floyd. In general, I don't think he should fight again after that matchup. So if I'm Conor, I retire, I count my money, I take acting gigs, I start another Call of Duty game, I do some voiceover work, I do whatever the hell I can other than take brain damage. So assuming Conor McGregor does not fight ever in the UFC again, which I think he won't. Maybe he will. I think he won't. Who you got left? You got Jon Jones, depending on what this buy rate does. You got Jon Jones, and you got Jon Jones. I don't really see anybody else. You don't have Ronda Rousey anymore. Amanda Nunes is not really marketable, and she was kind of buried by her boss. Yeah, I mean, GSP, I guess, but really, I mean, I don't know how well GSP is going to draw 4 years later. The Bisping fight was a really weird fight, but at least it was between two dudes who trash talk against each other. Now it's Bisping versus Robert Whittaker, who's an awesome fighter who could very well beat him, and GSP versus Woodley. And Woodley could talk some trash, but is it going to be enough to pop a big buy rate? I don't know. I guess by the low standards of UFC in 2017, 500,000 buys, 600,000 buys is still pretty damn good. But do I see him doing Conor or Rousey numbers anytime soon? No. They're very lucky Jones got the win. They're very lucky Jones came out great in the post-fight promo and in the fight itself. We'll see what happens. But I want to hear from you, though. What did you think about this pay-per-view? What do you think about Brock Lesnar potentially returning to the Octagon to fight Jon Jones? What do you think about DC's future? Let me know. Leave a comment below. Tweet us. Facebook us. Do what you got to do. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, take care, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. If you're in the New York area, watch our TV show, TSC News, every Thursday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. If you're in North Jersey and New York City, you can watch it on MNN2. Check your local listings. You can also watch our TV show on YouTube every Friday. Until then, folks, I'm going to sign off. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, everybody, as always, enjoy the fights.